Hi folks, with Tacitus today, your pushback channel, and thank you for joining this live stream. In this essay, I'd like to talk about the World Government Summit that was held a few days ago now in Dubai in the Middle East. Now, just the mainstream media was completely ignoring it. In fact, I stumbled across it by accident. It seems to be only those in the know and on the inside are part of it now. It's a gathering of various alleged experts, world leaders, public service hacks, and private sector goons like from the big financial firms and so on. So it's supposed to be futuristic in the sense that they're saying, well, how are we going to deal with the world's problems? Not tomorrow and the day after and so on and into the future. On the face of it, I guess, in a very, very superficial glance, it seems benign enough. A bunch of folks getting together and talking about how to make things better. Like, what's wrong with that? But that's not what it is. That's the veneer. Now it works in hand in glove with the globalists and the Davos Forum and Klaus Schwab and Soros and all that sort of stuff. So it's really just another sort of flavoring of the globalist project. That's really what it is. Now, if the people that are there are going to make a difference to the world in the future, you've either got to tremble because so many of them are fucking useless and corrupt and hopeless, or you've got to be a serious optimist to think that those idiots could make any difference. But and I don't suppose all of them are idiots. So maybe I'm overstating that. But for example, there's I think 10 or 15% of them are youngish women who are former beauty queens. I don't know what contribution they're going to make. Nearly a quarter of the people at this summit are just talking head news anchors, like from CNN and everything. I mean, what the fuck do they know? I mean, seriously. Then there's a decent sort of a number of political goons from dirt poor basket case countries and who are going to explain to the advanced economies of the West how it should be done. There's also quite a number of people from countries who've just grown very, very rich out of having vast reserves of oil, and then there's the usual sort of United Nations hangers-on, for the children and for women and the normal sort of leftist virtue signaling type stuff. So I'm not sure. There's maybe, I don't know. I'd say out of all the speakers that are there, I didn't count the total number, but out of all the speakers, I doubt if there's even more than 3 or 4 who could make any intelligent contribution to the way things are. But here's the rub, and you've kind of got to read between the lines on this. But in some cases they're being quite explicit. But what the thrust of it is that democratic or the people voting for their governments and the governments doing what the people want, that just isn't working. Now, they don't explain how or why it isn't working. They make vague references to climate change as an example. So, well, the only way we can combat climate change if all the countries of the world act in absolute concert. Now, is climate change an invented problem, or if not invented, hugely exaggerated by the globalists? And there's many people who think it is. So that's one aspect. They're saying, well, we have to get, because of this climate change, which is going to destroy the world 25 years ago, and then 10 years ago, and then 5 years ago, and then last year, and because it was going to destroy the world then, but somehow hasn't yet, then because of that, democracy and people voting for government accountable to the people, that has to go everywhere. That absolutely has to be just completely eradicated because of the climate change. Now, wow, that's a radical response. Now they say, well, no, it's not radical because the world's going to end 25 years ago, and then 20 years ago, and then 10 years ago, 5 years ago, and last year. So that's why we have to do it. Okay, but there are a lot of scientists to say that's actually not the case. But they're all Hitlers, fascists, Nazi. The world's going to win. And if you want a government that you vote for through the ballot box is accountable to you, the people, then you're Hitler. So it's quite a fantasy. The premise that they're basing democracy so yesterday, voting for your government, the people's elected representatives, it is so yesterday. So really it's a discussion of how to either eradicate that, the people voting and the government accountable, how to eradicate it or bypass it. It's one or the other. And these are, they would suggest, imperatives. Now, the other thing they've put forward, not only in globalists generally, but here at this forum, is that COVID proved, and along the same lines as in ideological, COVID proved that governments, elected governments responsible to the people, just don't work for international pandemics. And look at the disruption to the supply chains. Look at this. Look at that. Look at some. Look at all the problems that caused unemployment, food shortages. All these things were caused by COVID. COVID did it. But if we had a single unified international response, then it wouldn't have been a problem. Magically, there would have been no issue here. And therefore, again, it proves that the people voting for a government that's accountable to the people doesn't work. And if you disagree with that, you are Hitler. So that's the other, those are the two big sort of shakes that they throw around. Now, interestingly, they say COVID did it. So the supply chain disruption, COVID did that. The lockdowns that had people in their houses and so on locked in there for months at a time, COVID did that. And so every aspect of the last 2 years that was negative was caused by COVID. Now, wait a minute. Caused by COVID, excuse me. Wasn't it the government response to COVID that was way, way, way over the top? No such disruption was necessary. No such lockdowns was necessary. It could have been ridden through without any of that drama, and it wouldn't have made a whit of difference to the outcome in terms of life and death and so on. I mean, the recovery rate from COVID for people under the age of 60, I think it was 99.97%. And even if we include very sick people, people in their 80s and 90s plus who are very sick, even if we include those, the recovery rate and survival and recovery rate is still 99.69%, even if we include very sick people who also got COVID. So really the response that Western governments, and they all seem to operate in more or less unison with a couple of outliers, these severe and savage lockdowns achieved nothing other than to totally fuck the economy. That's all it did. So there's no recognition or acceptance of that. No recognition that the response to the COVID thing was ideological, and it was straight out of the globalist talking point script, straight out of it. So it can hardly be governments just randomly and arbitrarily responding. And the keenest, most zealous lockdowns, governments in favour of lockdowns, also happen to be the most zealous globalists. I mean, it could have just been a coincidence, but it's hard to believe it's a coincidence when so many of the zealots were also zealots on the lockdowns. So I don't believe that was coincidence at all. So it's straight out of the globalist thing. So here's these people saying it was COVID did it, and only an international coordinated combined response dictated from a central point of governance can do that. But gee, it's hard to do that, guys, because we've got all those dumb things from the past, these relics of the past, relics of white supremacy, of Hitler. This idea of people voting and governments and responsible in elections and that's a rule of law, due legal process, evidence. It's all bullshit because we had neither one world government that can just act and just do it. Fuck the people. Just do it. If we can get away with it, we're going to do it. And if the people don't like it, we'll get the fucking army onto them. Shoot the motherfuckers. I mean, they didn't say that, but the idea is that the central power that cannot be argued against, that is not accountable to any of the people. So that it follows that military force will be used against people that don't like it or object or push back or question it or whatever. So the world, this forum, I'm just going to go back. I've done some, I'll call it up here and just scroll. I'm just reading through some of it now. Yeah, there are not many impressive people here. Some of them, gee whiz. Some of them come from corrupt basket case countries, and they're going to tell us about governance and so on. So they've thrown. There's a couple. I mean, some of the speakers here are just authors. They're not experts at all. And they're created experts. That is, the globalists have engineered, book publishing deals, heavy promotion of their books, which coincidentally just happen to be really heavily promoting globalization. So they're coming along to do their globalization talking point speeches, and they here they're talking about we've got to have a more homogenous world, as in governments, homogenous governments. That's code for one government. But go through this. Have a look at World Govt, and have a little look at it yourself. See what you think. There's nothing in there that excites me. I mean, here's the front page. A World Govt Summit Organisation is a global, neutral, non-profit, which means that as soon as you hear non-profit, it's what a crazy activist organisation dedicated to shaping the future of governments. I mean, fuck, if that doesn't scare you, I don't know what does. Shaping the future of governments. Now, they get hold of people when they're younger, and they find who could potentially be an influencer, and in that, who can we control, who can also be an influencer. So it's better to get a local that you control to sell the idea of globalization to the people. That's sort of a standard practice. So if you've got a district of black lesbians, you get a black lesbian to sell globalization to them. So, but if you come across Trudeau, say, even a few years before he went into Parliament, or certainly before he became Prime Minister, and you'd see this part-time high school drama teacher. You'd look at him and how childish he is and how stupid, and you'd say, well, there's no way he's going to amount to anything. And then he ends up as the fucking Prime Minister, surrounding himself with idiots to boot, many of whom are also World Economic Forum flunkies. The summit, as I'm going on here, the summit in its various activities explores the agenda of the next generation of governments. That is how government will be structured going forward. They make no bones about it. The vote and accountable government, accountable to the people, has no place in the future. I mean, they're quite clear on that. Focusing on harnessing innovation to solve universal challenges facing humanity. See, straight out of the blocks, that's bullshit. Now, one day, not now, but one day, the technology will exist to take all the energy we need from the sun and store it, and from other means, hydro or wind or whatever, hydrogen cells and so on. That technology will exist. Now, whether it's going to be 10 years away, 20 years away, 30 years away, I have no doubt that it will exist at some point in the future. I mean, the embryonics of it are already there, but it'll be a long time before it becomes viable and commercial and cheaper than any of the existing forms we've got of electricity generation, distribution, and storage. So they're talking about innovation there, but they're not prepared to wait for the innovation to solve the energy production distribution issues. They want it now, because it furthers the globalist agenda and also makes some of the goons, in some of the Wall Street goons, very, very rich because they've invested big time in alternative energy. But so if they force up the price of gasoline and coal and all that sort of thing, or prohibit its use and artificially force up the price, then on a relative basis, the alternatives for energy are become more viable on a relative basis. Not absolutely. Still means everyone's got to pay way more for the energy than they should. But these bums, they just cannot wait for the innovation, which will get there, the innovation to produce the alternatives that are required. And I don't know why. It just shows what a bunch of two-bit amateurs they are. I want it, no. Like, too fucking bad. You wait until the technology catches up and then you can have it. But they're talking about harnessing innovation. That's bullshit. Harnessing innovation technology to solve universal challenges facing humanity. This is the other thing they do. They claim a challenge is universal. It's affecting everyone in the same way. No, it's not. I mean, different. Some countries are rich, some are poor, some are in deserts, some are in green fields. I mean, there's a whole range of differences. The idea that it's universal to affect everybody is trying to sell this idea of one world government will deal with these challenges that are invented. They just invent the fucking challenges and say, well, we've got the solution, which is bullshit. They don't. All they do is that they'll have the power, but not the solution to anything. Or there's a food shortage. Well, you'll have to damn eat insects, and you don't like it, get fucked. And that sort of thing. Since its inception in 2013, it goes on here, the summit has championed the mission of shaping future governments and creating a better future for humanity. Better says who? Better by what criteria? That no longer have elected governments, that arrest is arbitrary, detention in prison is arbitrary. What are they talking about exactly? Because if you want to improve humanity, if you want to improve it, then you have greater accountability, not less, but greater accountability of governments or anyone who's making the decisions, whoever it is. You have greater accountability. You have scrupulous application of the rule of law and due legal process. Something like arbitrary arrest and arbitrary detention should never happen in an advanced society. But these guys aren't talking about that. They're talking about centralising the power and doing what the fuck they want to do. The past 7 editions of the summit, it goes on, have successfully established a new model to collaborate on an international playing field to inspire and enable the next generation of governments. And where's the say of the people? Well, what say do the people have in this? The people that elect their representatives, and it's plain by the use of that language, they want to move as far away and as quick as they can away from elected representatives and accountability to the people. You've been with Tacitus today at your Pushback channel, and thank you for listening.